glossary. You should see the slide soon. And I would like to give you a brief overview of where we're at. What you see in the slide here are some words from the glossary, as it was towards the end of the conference. Now, this is not fancy, but in the main, it seems to me to give a fair idea of what were some of the key terms discussed. You'll see information, social, networks, but also data and literacy. Next, as a reminder of the main purpose of the glossary, I would like to remind you that basically it was twofold. So the first purpose was to provide a common understanding of terms that are related to infodemiology, especially as these terms often have their roots in several disciplines. And also to provide a place during the conference that was dedicated to the discussion of terminology. If you look at the left of the circle there, it will give you an idea that we included 80 terms, 80 initial terms at the beginning, and over 50 new terms were included during the conference. Also, during the conference, additional 100 terms were indicated as to be of particular interest to the infodemiology discussion. That brings the total number of terms in the glossary at over 230. But this number by itself doesn't give you an idea of three crucial aspects of the work. The first one is that many terms were connected to other terms during the conference, sort of mapping out what is relevant to what across several disciplines. Also, terms in the glossary now have multiple meanings, reflecting multiple uses. Think of a word like diffusion. It may refer to different things, whether we are talking about physics or in social media. And what came up was that we're going to have to be clearer about using these terms in context. The number by itself also doesn't give you an idea of the interdisciplinarity of the conference, including 15 and more fields, and the breadth of the expertise and the bodies of literature that are involved in compiling this glossary. Next, I'd like to walk you through the process through which the glossary was put together. We had some initial terms to get us oriented and to get us started. But after that, as during the sprints, which were during the expert discussions, a lot of terms, during the discussions, there was put a spotlight on some terms that needed a clarification. And that happened during the discussion of specific topics. And during these discussions, topic assistants and rapporteurs were always present and were taking notes, so that when it came time to do the edits to the glossary, either some participants could input their edits directly into the glossary after approval or after a discussion, or we input the edits directly based on the expert discussion that was going on. Now, one thing that this picture doesn't actually get right is that after the time to edit, we have the glossary in its current form, but it wasn't such a linear process like this slide seems to suggest. We actually took advantage of multiple sprints, multiple discussions over different days in the 2 weeks that the conference happened, to go back and forth between the third and the second step. So editing, and then going back to make sure that we were actually capturing in the glossary the discussion of the experts. Next, let me give you a more concrete example of this. So we started with the word literacy. And we figured at the beginning, perhaps we can include the different meanings of this term only under one term with different meanings. It was clear very soon that this was not the case, because the word ballooned and exploded into different terms like media literacy, health literacy, digital, information literacy. And that was the beginning. Then during the conference, participants and experts noticed that those categories weren't nearly enough. We needed to include also critical health and new media literacy. And these are all new categories that needed to be included in the glossary, which they were throughout the conference. What this highlights is that the glossary is meant to be a living process. It doesn't grow the tree of knowledge and good practices by itself, of course, but it can give a boost and facilitate. Next, I'd like to leave you with this. First of all, the glossary is a starting point. As you've heard it before and you'll hear in the rest of the webinar, the aim here is much higher, and this is just a small piece of it. There's a long road ahead, and terminology is often a first step. Two definitions which are particularly crucial. One, the definition of infodemic, as their overabundance of information, some accurate and some not, that makes it harder for people to find trustworthy sources and reliable guidance when needed. the effects of an infodemic are compounded during an epidemic or a pandemic, as we are in now, which makes it especially relevant. And also infodemiology, as we've heard before, the discipline dealing with infodemic management. The next steps in the future, we expect that the glossary will continue to be a living document, and it will be available for public comment, and we'll share more details on this as soon as they're defined. Lastly, I'd like to thank all of the contributors, and especially Patricia, who's also co-curator of the glossary at WHO, and all of our topic assistants and rapporteurs, including topic masters and coaches, including Margot and Brian, you've heard from before, because they work tirelessly in reporting and collating and connecting and cleaning up the wide-ranging discussion that was sometimes going on at 3 in the morning. Beyond adequate doses of coffee, it was the experts' enthusiasm and sparkling insights that kept us focused on the conversation at all times. So thank you to those who participated. Thank you to you who are interested in this. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Stefano.